Have you ever had a moment so plain, it should have vanished into the day, yet it hits so deep it changes how you see another person, and how you see yourself? That was me, Tessa, 19 years old, hands locked around the grips of a trembling bike in the honeyed light of late afternoon. My pulse was sprinting for reasons I couldn't fully explain. My older brother Julian, steady as a fence post in a storm, stood behind me and guided me with a patience I didn't know he had. And then he said something I never expected, something that made me stop breathing, left me wordless, and somehow made me feel older in a single second. What he said that day reshaped my understanding of trust, bravery, and the quiet ways love shows up in ordinary life. Hello, dear listeners. Before I share this complicated part of my life, please support the channel, subscribe, tap like, and tell us in the comments which city you're listening from. It truly helps us more than you know. And now, let's begin. It was a warm Saturday, the kind where sunlight feels like a soft embrace as it spreads over the cracked pavement on our street. I'd been begging Julian for weeks to teach me to ride. At 19, it was humiliating to admit, but somehow I'd never learned. Life got busy, excuses got easy. Maybe it was fear, maybe it was stubborn pride. Or maybe I'd been waiting for the right moment or the right person to stand close enough that I'd finally try. Julian had that rare mix of gentle patience and quiet authority that made trusting him feel effortless. He wasn't only my big brother. He was the steady weight that kept me from drifting when I didn't even realize I was close to breaking. Julian leaned against the fence at the edge of the driveway, arms folded, the golden light catching the dusting of freckles on his nose. "You ready, Tess?" he asked, voice calm, with just enough teasing to make my stomach tighten. I nodded and gripped the handlebars so hard my knuckles paled. The old bike shuddered in the sun, its paint bleached from years outside, its chain creaking like it carried secrets of its own. He stepped in beside me and crouched to adjust the seat by a small notch. "Ease up on your hands," he said. "I know it looks scary, but trust me, you're stronger than you think." His tone was gentle, but there was a deeper meaning under it. Like he wasn't only talking about balance on two wheels, but balance in life. I swallowed, feeling pressure gather in my chest. Julian had always carried a confidence that rubbed off on everyone around him. I wanted that confidence more than I'd ever wanted anything in that moment. He steadied the bike from behind, one hand on the seat, one firm against the middle of my back. "Okay," he said. "When I say go, you pedal. Don't overthink it. Feel it. Balance comes from moving forward." He met my eyes, and I saw the quiet belief he had in me, the belief I rarely had in myself. My heart lurched. I nodded again, but my voice disappeared. "Go," he said. "The bake." E jumped forward and I wobbled, the pavement blurring under me for one terrifying beat. I was sure I'd tip, but then I felt his hands. Steady, sure. Correcting without forcing, guiding without taking control. "That's it," he called. "Chin up. Look ahead." His voice stayed calm, encouraging, as if nothing existed outside this small circle of driveway and sunlight. And then, without warning, he let go. I went rigid, not because I fell, but because I realized I was moving on my own. Disbelief and exhilaration collided in my chest, and my eyes stung as if tears were waiting. I glanced back, expecting him to be running behind me, ready to catch me, but he was a few steps away with his hands in his pockets, wearing that calm, reassuring smile. "See," he said, "I told you." I laughed, shaky and loud, pedaling faster as the wind snapped against my face. "I can't believe it," I shouted, even though the words felt too small for what I felt inside. Julian walked over and clapped softly, like he'd just watched something huge happen. "You didn't need to trust me," he said. "You needed to trust yourself a little more." He paused and rested a light hand on the handlebar. Sunlight slid through his hair and his eyes softened when they found mine. Then he said what I wasn't prepared to hear. "Tessa, you're stronger than you think," he told me. "Not just on a bike. You can handle more than you give yourself credit for. Don't forget that." I stopped pedaling and let the bike wobble under me, my breath catching like it had nowhere to go. His words were simple, but they cut clean through the noise of every insecurity I'd carried. I wanted to speak, to thank him, to say something that matched the moment, but nothing came. I just stared at him, and in that ordinary driveway something inside me shifted into place. I realized my brother had always been there, quietly rooting for me, showing me that courage isn't always loud or heroic. Sometimes it's gentle, patient, and unshakably steady. We spent the next hour riding back and forth, laughing at my crooked turns, Julian correcting my posture, guiding me when I faltered, cheering my tiny improvements like they were trophies. By the time the sun dipped behind the rooftops and the sky turned gold and lavender, I felt different, lighter. The fear hadn't vanished, but it had softened, mixed with pride and trust. Julian stayed close, steady as ever. Not just teaching me to ride a bike, but teaching me something far more important, how to trust myself. That day I learned something I didn't expect. Bravery doesn't always roar, sometimes it speaks in a whisper, in the hands of someone who believes in you even when you don't. As we walked our bikes back into the garage, I looked at Julian, wanting to tell him what it meant to me. But the words snagged somewhere between gratitude and awe. He only smiled like he already knew, and maybe he did. The evening that followed was quiet, almost painfully normal, yet something underneath it felt charged. I stood in our small kitchen rinsing the last dishes, the gentle clink of glass against plates filling the room. Julian sat on the counter, peeling an orange like it was a casual habit, his calm presence anchoring the whole space. Outside the window, twilight deepened, and the final streaks of pink and gold melted into night. I could still feel the day in my body, the fear, the rush, the triumph, like it hadn't settled yet. He broke the silence first. "You did really well today, Tess." There was a softness in his voice that made me look over mid-motion. I was used to Julian being patient, but this felt different. It wasn't just pride in a small win, it sounded like he was seeing something in me I hadn't learned to recognize. I can't believe I actually did it, I admitted, letting the disbelief and excitement spill out. My hands still shook faintly from leftover adrenaline, and I wiped them on a towel like I could hide it. Julian tilted his head, a small smile pulling at his mouth. "Believe it," he said. "You've been doubting yourself for way too long, and sometimes, especially you, people think the world is heavier than it really is." He paused, then added, "But you're capable, Tess, more than you know." I froze, caught between wanting to laugh and wanting to cry. His words were gentle, but they carried weight, the kind that presses against your ribs. I'd never thought of myself as strong, certainly not next to Julian, who seemed to do everything with ease. And yet here he was, not just telling me, but showing me I could be more than I'd imagined. We sat in silence for a while, the fridge humming, a distant dog barking now and then. Sitting with him felt strangely intimate, though completely innocent, the kind of quiet that deepens connection without asking permission. It was hard to believe that only hours earlier I'd been terrified of falling, and now, across from Julian, I felt like I was standing at the edge of something new. "You know," he said after a moment, popping an orange slice into his mouth, "life's a lot like learning that bike. At first it feels impossible, like you'll crash any second." He shrugged lightly. "But once you start moving, once you trust yourself, things start to click." I gave a nervous laugh and shook my head. "You make it sound easy." Then my fear slipped out. "What if I fall again?" Julian leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Then you get up," he said. "That's it. You fall, you learn, you try again." His voice stayed steady. "And sometimes you'll surprise yourself with how far you go before you even wobble." He looked right at me then, eyes calm and unflinching. "The truth is, Tess, I've always believed in you, even when you didn't. And I'm not stopping." The words landed in a way I didn't expect. It wasn't just encouragement. It was faith, clean and unwavering, and it left me unable to speak. I wanted to say thank you, or even I love you, but emotion tangled my throat and held the words hostage. I stared at T, the last stripes of twilight fading outside the window until I finally managed to whisper, "Julian, thank you. I don't know what else to say." He shrugged, small, almost casual, yet it carried warmth that made me feel truly seen. "You don't have to say anything," he replied. "Just remember it, okay?" Then softer, "Remember you can do more than you think, not just today, every day." We stayed there a little longer, sharing an understanding that didn't need language. It felt rare, almost sacred, like the world had paused to let us exist in that quiet kitchen exactly as we were. And I realized Julian wasn't just my brother in the normal, everyday sense. He was a guide, someone who had been shaping who I was becoming without making a show of it. Later that night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, letting his words loop in my mind. I replayed the day, The shaky start, the laughter, the wind on my face, and most of all that sentence, "You're stronger than you think." It echoed until something inside me shifted. For the first time I started to believe it, not only about the bike, but about my life, about my own ability to carry myself forward. I understood then that courage isn't always grand gestures or fearless leaps. Sometimes it's quiet and patient, and sometimes it grows because someone sees your potential before you can see it yourself. The next morning I woke up early, dawn light spilling across my room, and I felt a strange blend of calm and anticipation. I wasn't sure what I was waiting for, but I knew I wanted to keep hold of what I'd learned, the confidence, the trust, the courage. Julian was already awake, humming softly while he brewed coffee in the kitchen. I watched him from the doorway for a second, letting the ordinary comfort of his presence settle over me. When I stepped in, he looked up and smiled. "Morning, sleepyhead," he said. "Ready for round 2 on the bike?" I laughed and shook my head. "I think I'm ready for more than the bike now." Julian lifted an eyebrow, curious. "Oh? And what does that mean?" I hesitated, feeling the weight of what I wanted to say, the truth that had been forming slowly inside me. "It means I'm ready to try," I said. "Not just riding, I mean everything. I want to believe in myself the way you believe in me." He didn't answer right away. He just smiled, that quiet, steady smile that made hard things feel possible. Then he nodded. "Then we'll do it one thing at a time, Tess," he said. "One thing at a time." And right then I understood something important. Growth, courage, and trust can't be rushed. They build slowly, in small wins, quiet moments, shared smiles, and soft encouragement. When Julian poured coffee and handed me a warm mug, I felt a kind of warmth that didn't come from the drink. I felt seen. I felt capable. I felt like, maybe, I was ready for whatever came next. The days after that felt different, even though nothing dramatic had changed. The sun still painted our street in gold. Leaves still rustled LA, zilly in the afternoon breeze. Julian still carried that grounded, steady energy that made me feel both protected and pushed forward. Yet something had shifted in the way I experienced everything. I felt lighter, more awake, more alive in my own skin. It was a Sunday afternoon when Julian suggested we ride to the park. It wasn't far, just a short trip down winding streets lined with maple trees and iron lampposts that flashed in the sun. The air smelled faintly of cut grass and warm earth, and the distant hum of traffic blended with birdsong. I felt nervous again, more nervous than the first day, and I couldn't explain why. This was different, like the stakes were higher, even if I couldn't name what I was risking. "Come on, Tess," Julian said, tugging his backpack strap into place. "A little challenge today. We'll take the gravel trail by the pond. Trust me, you'll handle it." I hesitated, staring at the uneven path ahead. Gravel was unpredictable. It could kick the tires sideways, steal your balance, send you down hard. My chest tightened just thinking about it. Then I remembered the driveway, the laughter, and his steady voice telling me I was stronger than I thought. I took a deep breath and nodded. We started smoothly, tires humming on asphalt, sunlight flickering through the trees in patches. I found a rhythm again, the balance, the control, the quiet thrill of steering my own direction. Julian rode beside me, close enough to reassure me without crowding me, his presence like a steady shadow. When I looked over, he gave me that small, knowing smile, and it felt like the world narrowed to just the two of us and the path ahead. The gravel slope was steeper than I expected, and my confidence shook the second the tires hit loose stone. I swerved, my stomach dropping. Julian caught it immediately. "You've got this," he called. "Lean into it, trust yourself." I obeyed, eyes forward, letting instinct do what fear tried to interrupt. Panic flashed, then transformed into exhilaration as I rolled over small dips and bumps. The wind tugged at my hair, my heart pounding with fear and triumph mixed together. And then, without even deciding to, I smiled. I was doing it. I was really doing it. We reached the pond after a few minutes, slowing down and laughing like we'd outrun something invisible. The water glittered in the late sun, ducks gliding across the surface like drifting boats. Julian parked his bike near mine and leaned against the railing, watching me with that same calm intensity that always made me feel understood. "You did really well," he said quietly. Not the kind of compliment people toss out to be polite. This was different. This was pride that came from knowing the effort it took to face fear and keep moving anyway. Gratitude surged up so fast it tightened my throat. "Thanks," I whispered. I felt it this time, like I can actually do more than I thought." Julian nodded, gaze resting on the water. "That's what courage is, Tess," he said. It's not doing one thing perfectly. It's trusting yourself enough to keep going when it's uncomfortable, when you're scared." He paused. "You did that, and I hope you can finally see the strength you've had all along." I looked down, trying to carry the weight of his words without dropping them. Then, unexpectedly, he said something that made my heart stumble. "Watching you grow like this, seeing you start to believe in yourself, it makes me proud in a way I didn't see coming." The honesty in his voice hit me hard. I turned to him, searching his face for exaggeration or a joke, but there was none. It was real, deep, quiet, undeniable. And suddenly I understood his patience, his calm guidance, the steady faith he'd offered me. This had never been only about bikes or confidence. It was about teaching me, without fuss, that I could trust myself, and that someone I loved had believed in me even when I didn't. I swallowed, emotions stirring like the water below. I wanted to tell him what it meant, how it was changing me, but the right words wouldn't come, so I just nodded, and for a long moment neither of us spoke. The world seemed to pause around us, filled only with leaf rustle and the soft ripple of the pond. Finally, Julian turned toward me with a gentle smile. "You know, Tess," he said, "life has these moments that sneak up on you. They look small, but they change everything." He tilted his head. "Today feels like one of those, don't you think?" I nodded again, my voice trembling a little. "Yeah," I said, "it really does." We stayed by the pond as the light deepened from gold into amber. There was a quiet closeness in that space, the kind that doesn't need explaining. I could feel the lessons settling into me. Trust, courage, self-belief, shaping me in ways I hadn't expected. And Julian beside me wasn't just my brother. He was my anchor, my guide, proof that growth often comes from ordinary places and unexpected afternoons. When we finally got back on our bikes to head home, the sun low behind the trees, something inside me shifted again. The fear that once felt enormous was still there, but it had been softened by confidence and trust, not only in myself, but in the people who had been quietly believing in me all along. As we pedaled side by side down the winding path, it hit me that this wasn't just a bike ride. This was practice for life, moving forward with patience, courage, and steady faith in myself. That night in bed, I replayed every detail, the loose gravel, the light on Julian's hair, the warmth in his voice. Some lessons can't be explained into your bones, they have to be lived there, and without realizing it at first, I'd lived one of the most important lessons I'd ever learn, that courage, trust, and love often arrive in quiet, ordinary moments, and those moments can change you more than anything loud ever could. The next morning, the world felt new, though I couldn't have explained why at first. The air was crisp with a faint scent of cold soil, as if the night had scrubbed everything clean. Sunlight filtered through my half-open curtains, painting delicate shapes across the floor. I lay there for a while, staring at the ceiling and thinking about the driveway, the park, the laughter, the small victories, the fear that had been replaced with something steadier. Downstairs, Julian was already up, his familiar presence moving through the house like sunlight through blinds. I heard dishes clink, the coffee machine hum, and an occasional quiet laugh as he talked to himself while making breakfast. I smiled without meaning to. Somehow, the ordinary felt extraordinary now, as if every sound carried warmth I'd been missing. When I finally got dressed and walked into the kitchen, Julian stood by the counter holding 2 steaming mugs. He looked up, and that small smile, the one that always carried calm reassurance, met my eyes. "Good morning," he said softly. "Ready for today?" I tilted my head, sensing there was more under his words. Today didn't feel like another casual ride. It felt like something else, something important, even if I couldn't name it yet. I nodded and took the mug he offered. "I think so." We stepped outside together, bikes in hand, and sunlight spilled across the quiet street. Everything looked familiar, but brighter. The light catching leaf edges, the smell of damp earth, the distant laughter of kids playing in yards. I felt a steady anticipation, like I was standing on the edge of something significant without knowing the shape of it. Julian led me toward a small hill at the edge of the neighborhood, one we'd passed 100 times but never really claimed. The slope was gentle, grass brushing our legs as we pushed our bikes up. My heart pounded, not with fear this time, but with excitement and a strange, quiet nervousness. "Here's the test," Julian said, glancing at me with a playful spark in his eyes. "No help, no steadying hands, just you, the bike, and the hill. Think you're ready?" I swallowed and tightened my grip, mind racing, and then I remembered everything he'd taught me. Move forward, trust the balance, let your body learn. I could feel that lesson in my legs, my core, my breath. I think I can," I whispered. Julian stepped back, giving me space without letting me feel alone. "I'll be right here," he said. "I'm not going anywhere." I nodded, and the world narrowed to me, my bike, and the green slope ahead. I took a breath and started pedaling, slow at first, tires whispering through the grass. My balance wavered, but I let my body find its answer. Then the hill tilted downward, speed rushed in, wind lifting my hair, and exhilaration flooded my chest. I glanced back out of habit, half expecting Julian running behind me, but he wasn't. He stood at the bottom, hands in his pockets, watching with that calm, unwavering gaze. And in that moment, something clicked so deeply it felt like it rewrote me. I didn't need him to hold me anymore. I could do this. I had always been capable. I just needed someone to help me believe it was true. I reached the bottom breathless, laughing with a pure, uncontained joy. Julian was there clapping softly, pride warming his face. "You did it, Tess," he said. "Look at you." Tears pricked my eyes, a mix of relief, pride, and gratitude. "I did it," I whispered, still stunned. "I really did it." Julian walked over and gently ruffled my hair, a simple gesture that grounded me. "You did it because you believed in yourself," he said. "I just reminded you of what you already had." We sat in the grass with our bikes beside us, and I finally understood what this was really about. Courage wasn't just riding a bike or beating fear once. It was trusting yourself, letting yourself be seen, and accepting help without handing over your own life. And love, I realized, often arrives quietly and patiently, without fanfare, through small gestures that end up transforming you. The sun dipped behind the trees, throwing long shadows across the hill. Julian leaned back on his hands, eyes on the horizon, and I mirrored him, letting the warmth of the day and the bond between us settle in. "Yeah, Jules," I said softly. "I don't think I ever knew how much I needed this. Not just the bike, your belief in me." My voice caught. "It's more than I expected." He turned to me, expression gentle and understanding. "I know," he said. "Sometimes the people who love us see our strength before we do." He paused, then added, "And my job, my privilege, was helping you find it for yourself." I smiled, quiet and full, while the wind played with my hair and the last sunlight danced on the grass. I felt a sense of completion, of growth, of gratitude that didn't need big words. I'd learned something I would carry forever, that bravery often hides in small moments, that love can be steady and quiet, and that self-belief can be nurtured until it finally becomes yours. As we rode home slowly, the path lit by fading gold, a gentle confidence settled into my chest. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was subtle, steady, lasting, just like Julian had been all along. And in that quiet, ordinary, extraordinary ride, I understood I wasn't only learning to ride a bike. I was learning how to move through life with courage, trust, and a clearer understanding of who I am. And for the first time, I knew, truly knew, that I could face whatever comes next,